Hello there, welcome to Saber Jewel Gaming at the Movies, where we take a look at some of your favourite games and their translation onto the big screen. And today we are looking at an all-time classic, Mortal Kombat. With the original Mortal Kombat game in 1992 and its sequel in 1993, both a massive success with fans happy with its much more gritty and violent realism than Street Fighter 2, it was no surprise that in 1995 they wanted to capture this market on the big screen with the Mortal Kombat movie. It was released in the same year as Mortal Kombat 3, which was marketing genius. They'd used the game to get people to watch the film, and the film to get people to buy the new game. So far so good. But while it was fans of the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 games that they had to appeal to, it wasn't exactly that was the main comparison. You see, earlier in the same year, Street Fighter the movie had also been released, another movie based on the game's direct competition, and if you remember, that film, well, it flopped, okay, it flopped. It was fun retrospectively, it's got that cheesy vibe to it, but it was not a hit. And Mortal Kombat was going to compete with that. That was going to be its comparison. So, what did it do differently? Well, while it still didn't take itself too seriously, everything else it did the exact opposite. Whereas Street Fighter 2 sort of hyper-focused on Guile, who was a sort of a secondary character, and still managed to try and shoehorn in every other character, this really narrowed it down to a small bunch of individuals. The main focus is around Liu Kang, obviously, who is indeed one of the main characters. It also has Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade, and it's about them as humans going to compete in Mortal Kombat with assistance from Raiden. And here again we touch on another difference. You see, while Street Fighter's main selling point was, it's a Jean-Claude Van Damme film, that, yeah, believe it or not, that was actually a selling point at one point, with also having Raul Julia and Kylie Minogue as names, Mortal Kombat didn't really do that. It had Christopher Lambert in it as Raiden, and him being the main star name. He'd been in films such as Highlander, but other than that, he himself wasn't a really huge name, so instead it was the characters themselves that carried this film, and rather than just trying to shoehorn an actor into a character, they found actors and actresses that did a pretty decent job of representing the character that they were playing in the game. Even beloved characters like Scorpion and Sub-Zero, whilst they weren't given a great deal of character development, they were giving some fantastic fight scenes, and this was enough for the moviegoers at the time. All they cared about was getting to see enough of their favourite characters, and this managed to do that without ever really feeling like things were being shoehorned in. If anything, with a lot of the characters you were left wanting more. As for the storyline, well, it was kept basic, exactly like you'd want it to be. This is basically a fighting game, so all we needed from storyline was some excuse to throw these characters together to beat each other up, and that's kind of what we got. The three main characters, Sonya, Johnny, and Liu Kang, were each given a basic background reason to end up on a boat that takes them to an island where Raiden tells them they're destined to fight to save Earth. And that's pretty much then what they do. There's a few little subplots thrown in, but the main one is around Liu Kang wanting to avenge his brother. It's simple, it does the job, and as long as it gets you from fight to fight, that was enough. The question is, how good are those fights? Because with a really simple plot, they need to be good. And this is where we come down to a matter of opinion. You see, a lot of people, the critics and fans even, criticise this film for not being as bloody and as violent as the game itself was, but that's a little bit naive. No, actually, let me be clear, that's really dumb. You see, at the time when these games came out, the games weren't 18s or even 15s in the way that games are now. The game age limits were just a recommendation. So what did that mean? Well, it meant that your average Mortal Kombat fan was about 11, 12 or 13. You may have had some older people that also enjoyed the games, but your core audience were under 15. So what would be the benefit of making it an 18? Well, there wouldn't be. You could make it artistically more violent, but so what if no one can watch it? So in the end, the fights were heavily choreographed, they were a little bit cheesy, but by God they were entertaining, and they still are entertaining now. This is a film I go back and watch time and again, and if you're not actually pumped up by the fighting, you are pumped up by the music, but we will come to that eventually. We get nods to friendships and fatalities. Granted, the fatalities aren't quite at the level they are in the game, but they're still entertaining enough, and there's enough for the fans of the game to be looking and going, ah yeah, I like that one. The set design itself is pretty decent and gives a good feel of being in the Mortal Kombat games. Each fight takes place in a slightly different environment, and while it kinda doesn't make sense how they just appear in each of these environments, I don't really care, quite frankly. It still looks quite cool. However, there are some scenes where the special effects really fail. The scene with Scorpion giving his fatality, and oh my god, the scenes of Reptile in his reptilian form are embarrassing. And not just now, this isn't a retrospective opinion, this was at the time being sat in the cinema with my friend going, oh my god, what is that? But you put that to one side, and yeah, it's still enjoyable. And in some ways, that cheesy lameness from a retrospective look now makes it all the better. And I would not be doing this film a service without talking about the audio, the soundtrack. Okay, generally the music in it, it's fine, it's good, it's serviceable, great, no problem, yada yada. However, that track, you know the one I mean. If you don't, just right now go and type in Mortal Kombat 1995 theme tune into YouTube and prepare yourself for one hell of a goddamn banger, because it is epic. There is no piece of music that gets you more psyched up for a fight, for a workout, anything. And that music is used to great effect in the film. It really sets the tone. It's incredible, and it's probably the best part of the film, quite frankly, but the fight scenes when it takes place are absolutely outstanding. And the rest of the music in it really does a good job too of setting that feeling of being in a Mortal Kombat game. This film is, if I'm judging it as a film, okay, it ain't great, but it is a video game film. Its job is to represent the game. Its job is to bring those game characters to life. And you have to judge a film of a game differently to any other movie, because it has a different job to do. It has something different to accomplish. And Mortal Kombat, unlike Street Fighter, doesn't just do it with a tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't do it ironically. It does it full stop. This film is incredible. So how was the film received at the time? Well, right away, critics gave it a little bit of a hard time. They did give some praise to it, but they talked about, the special effects being quite lame and that it didn't really represent things very well, blah blah blah. But the fact is, the fans loved it. This film actually grossed 8 times what the film cost to make. That was incredible, and up until Pokemon the first movie was the most successful video game movie of all time. It massively surpassed the disasters of Super Mario Bros. And Street Fighter, and it actually showed that video games could be turned into movies that the video game fans were proud of. So what's the movie's legacy? Well, it's hard to distinguish the movie's legacy from the game's legacy, but we'll try and do that. First of all, there's the sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and this was... everything that was wrong with Mortal Kombat was there 10 times worse. Everything that was right about it wasn't. Mortal Kombat Annihilation was what you expect from a computer game movie. It was just lazy trash. Whilst there was talk of a third movie and there was some loosely connected anime films as well, that was pretty much it for the Mortal Kombat movie franchise until shows and movies rebooted it later down the line. But in recent years, we've actually seen just how memorable and beloved this movie was. Mortal Kombat 11, with its numerous different skins for characters, actually had a number of skins that made the characters of, for example, Shang Tsung and Sonya look like the actors and actresses from this movie. And it's not only the newest Mortal Kombat games paying homage to this movie. The most recent Mortal Kombat movie actually used a variation of the music from this in its trailer and post-credit scene because they knew that people were not going to want to see Mortal Kombat without hearing that tune. For a movie based on a computer game made in 1995, that says quite a lot. It says that this film has really tied itself into the subconscious of cinema goers, but especially game fans. So, overall, you'd have to call that a success. So, in ranking Mortal Kombat's leap to the big screen from computer games, I'm going to say that this film easily deserves an 8 out of 10. It was great fun then, and it's great fun now. Hopefully this movie review entertained you. If you've got other computer game movies you'd like me to review, comment down below and I'll see if I can get to them.